Good morning. This is the office hour for Oregon State University PDC-PRO, summer 2023. This is call number 4, and the next lesson due is assignment 4 on August 21st. Pardon me. So, have I got you, Kim? Oh, connecting to audio still.
Hi.
Oh, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh. Mute.
Might be a little, oh, I don't know. Did you say anything like a whole sentence? Because I could hear you clearly for a minute.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. Interesting. Let's see. Still not?
I can hear you now. I don't.
Very strange.
To me?
Oh, that's the air ringtone. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I just tested it and it's working.
Hi. Sorry. Now I can hear you. I fixed you. I couldn't hear you before.
Oh, but you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there's a chat. What's that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Okay.
Hi, Molly.
Good morning.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay.
All right, I think we got that sorted. I had a little text snafu with the sun. So, oh, got a few more. Lynette.
Maybe I should get a pen.
A few more minutes.
Mhm.
I showed up a few minutes late too. So. Good morning, Lynette. Okay, you're muted. That's okay. That's okay. It's up to you. Yeah. Okay, so lesson 4. We're on microclimates and zones. How's it going? Any updates?
Yeah, I spent the night out there again and camped and thought a little bit about the zones. I don't have a house there, so I don't really know how to approach that, and like the closest to the house and further away I'm more, but I'm looking at like where the most active point would be. I think I've kind of figured that out, but I'm realizing how much time you really need to spend at a property to get to know it. Because yeah, I walked around there for quite a bit, but yeah, I still don't really know.
It takes time. Yeah, through the seasons and
Just even like spending, noticing the difference from morning and evening and middle of the day, and how the wind changes and the shade and that's not even different seasons. That was just all in one day.
just Monday, yeah. And how long do you have that site?
9 years.
I was gonna say it's really few years, right?
Yeah.
I don't have, I was just pulling up each of your projects on here. I don't have.
I haven't really updated it or done anything this week.
Oh, that's fine. Lynette, have you submitted your lesson 3 yet?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. And you marked it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm up to date on marking, except for a few that I'm just trying. Oh, here we go. It wasn't saved in my bookmarks. So I'm going to do that now because it makes it a lot easier for me to just pull things up and then I can take a look at them. There we go. Cool. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about the zones and microclimates, or have you gotten into the work yet?
Maybe like the identifying, to be honest, the plants, I'm kind of on like the ones that I know and the ones that I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how to identify them.
Okay. Start with getting pictures of them. And then there's what kind of a phone do you have? Do you have an iPhone or?
Yeah, I've got an iPhone, yeah.
Okay. So there's a really great app called I think iNaturalist.
Okay.
And you can upload photos to it and you'll get an ID. So that's a good way. I know a lot of people almost exclusively use that when they're out in the field trying to identify something. You can share with me. I can see, if I know it, it might, if it's a intercontinental thing, then I might be able to identify it. There's lots of plant groups on Facebook where you can upload a photo. So make sure to get, like, if there's flowers on it, get the flowers, get leaf, what the stems look like try and get some really, really close up photos of, like, if there's any particular like leaf patterns or like leaf hairs, like some species are differentiated, or families you can even differentiate on whether or not there's like hairs on the stem. Like it can kind of be, it can be that tricky. And so make sure to get like plenty of clear photos that really capture details. And then if there's anything else, then I can ask for a picture. But you can get something with having, like, if there's any photos, if there's seed pods, some picture of like a mature leaf, and then whatever the pattern of those leaves are, like if they're in how they're arranged around the stem will make a difference. So
okay.
I use Google Images or reverse search. I just
sometimes
plants and
the only thing is you want to be careful with that, because like especially with AI, I'm noticing now, like I'm seeing wood sorrel come up on, I'm surprised it wasn't just one. I'm seeing it come up on a number of sites as clover or vice versa, because it's like 3 little kind of loaf-shaped leaves arranged. It looks very superficially like clover, but there's very clear differences if you know the differences. So I'd be really careful about just using like unverified images. Yeah, just for that reason, especially with AI exploding so fast, and some of the mistakes that I'm seeing, I'm like, oh, like here we go.
Yeah, no, I noticed there was a few that I really had to, like, I mean, I could have been lazy about it or like do a quick search, but it's really tricky to tell from just random pictures.
Actually, because you're in California, the California rare plant database has really good information. Yeah, that's one that I use. I don't use plants for a future PFAF a lot, mostly because I'm building spreadsheets, I'm using the Natural Capital Plant database. I'm not sure if PFAF has photos in it, but California, the California plant databases, California Naturalists, I think, have good good images. Oh yeah, so okay, so the PFAF does have that. Do you know that site that I'm talking about? Plans for a future? Okay. I know it's Andrew's included in the resources somewhere, but
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if you get stuck on anything, I can probably help you identify it because you're like less than an hour away. So we're in the same kind of zone. So. How was you, Molly?
My question is in terms of the zoning, because I am in like a suburban area, would there not be like considered like a wild, like a zone 5 area? Like I guess there might be like, because that west side of the property butts up against like the city canal, but still the city kind of manages that. But
yeah, you're not, especially on a small site, you're not necessarily going to get all 5 zones on one property.
Okay.
One of the example given, I'm just trying to find that tab, in the assignment description, and not faulting if you can see this because I know there's so much information. But in the SWOT analysis for the map current zones, one of the examples is like under threats with no zone 5, the client would benefit from finding a zone 5 outside of the site to observe or allow a section of the site to be an unmanaged zone 5. So if you need to, you can look outside your particular site for that. Because a lot of suburban sites will only have like maybe up to zone 3. Where you're only hitting that like once a month or something.
Yeah. So. Okay, cool. And what would you recommend in terms of like a zone 5? Like here it's kind of like all suburban until like the mountains, but like that's obviously going to be a different climate than what it is like in the valley. And I guess like I could go out to like the high desert, but there's also like the like conservation centers. Like are those like a good kind of like I guess it's not as like wild, but I know they're using native plants. I just don't like, what's your like opinion on like conservation like centers like that, or just like trying to like go out?
Yeah, you could give either any or a collection of those as proxies.
Okay.
It's the same thing. I think we talked about it in a previous office hour of like you're telling a story, and it's like if your site and the city really like may not have any zone 5 areas left to work with, so you can learn something by going to the mountains and seeing what's out there. You can learn something from going to the high desert, or to a certain extent to a conservation site when it's one of those like native plant kind of planted out areas. They're definitely like a microcosm, and so it really depends on how big, right? How big and how wild or how managed it is. But you can learn something from each of those. I think I wouldn't necessarily call like a native plant, say like a native plant garden as a zone 5, because they are usually like pretty highly tended. They're managed zones, but you can also take information from that. So if you're like, okay, I've like zones 1 to 3, zones 4 and 5, I'm looking to these as examples to learn from. That's what I would go with.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Lynette, how about you? How are you doing for zones in terms of your site? Because you've got a lot. You've got a lot going on.
I've got a lot, but to be honest, I don't really have a zone 5 either. But based on what you're saying, like to the east is pretty much zone 5.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
The west is farmland, but I'm mostly zone 1. Like everybody walks all over the place all day. There's a lot of zone 1.
So even in like that wooded area.
But the thing is,
got that as a zone 1. Okay.
Yeah, because I've put it on, because the thing is, so that is because that's a playground. All the kids play on it.
Ah, okay, cool.
So all day. So a lot of it is zone 1. I've got like the permaculture garden bit is maybe like a zone 2, and really the zone 4 bits are basically the the sort of gardeny bits, the garden bits that the gardeners are on, but
Isn't that
nobody else.
ironic?
That is, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the rest of it, because a lot of it's paved.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that is quite ironic and a
Yeah,
bit sad, really.
I was going to say, oh, the permaculture garden is the least visited. Okay. All right. That might be an opportunity.
Yeah, but the thing
Yeah.
is, it's tucked right around the bottom,
Sure.
and nobody they pass through it. Like there's a path that goes through it, but
Mhm.
it's so fenced off.
Yeah. Oh, I'll say that's often what happens. It's the
Yeah,
same thing with community gardens. They get like tucked into like, oh, we have this extra space that nobody's using. It's like, well,
yeah,
okay, there's not really like a clear traffic to it. So it makes such a bigger uphill push to actually get anything happening there, because you have to like convince people to come and use this area.
yeah,
Whereas if we designed them in like into areas that are already in
yeah. Part
active
of
use,
it,
it would,
yeah.
it would certainly make it easier. Yeah.
On a positive note, though, they do now have like it comes from the buses and it goes through it, so you've got people trekking through it. So I think
Okay.
it's just about upping the profile a bit, really.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, and even just the exercise, like going through and thinking about that in terms, I mean, sometimes that's just the biggest value in thinking about your site in terms of like, how are we actually using this, or where are people going, and it can
Yeah.
help to clarify. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a couple of questions though, just not
Sure.
about the zones or the
Okay.
microclimate, but I was thinking, because I was watching one of the videos this week, and I think they were saying about like for inclines of more than 20% that you wouldn't like terrace it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you do? Because I've got quite a slopey site. What do you do like for water capture, for earthworks and everything, for inclines that are more than that?
You would basically just focus on establishing tree cover.
Okay.
Yeah. So keeping trees on that to stabilize it. So in order to, one, get trees established, and also to prevent like large slippage or large erosion events, you can do things like small basins around the trees, so that water coming down the slope is caught, like we can call them like fishtail swales, like little basins around each tree.
Right.
And if you're really like planting a bare hillside, you can arrange them in kind of a net arrangement, so that water from one basin, if it ever overflowed, would overflow into the one below it. So you're limiting like the run that water would end up going, and picking up speed and picking up debris going down the slope.
Okay.
But that's really the limit of the earthworks that you'd want to plan on that steep of a slope.
Mm. And I've got another question about mulch as well. So mulch, what sort of stuff can you use as mulch then? Because I read somewhere that you have to use like bigger bits with less dust, so that you don't end up getting like fungal infections and pests and stuff. Is that right? Or
That helps, because the smaller particles will pack together, and then you're more likely to get either like anaerobic or like mold growing in, because the water doesn't really penetrate the small
okay.
bits as well. But yeah, so wood chips work well. I know a lot of people that use, if you can get like fleeces from like sheep fleece. So if you can get discarded wool,
All right.
especially if you can get the wool that has what they call tags, so like all the little manure bits and hay bits and the garbage wool, that actually works really well as a mulch, because I mean it's kind of greasy, so once the water penetrates through it, it really helps to hold it in the soil, and then it's also a really good source of nitrogen.
Okay.
And so as it breaks down, it really helps to fertilize the soil, but it holds things in place quite well. It's almost like a geofabric, geotextile. So then again, you can use like burlap sacking, works well. if it hasn't been treated, sometimes, I don't know, some of them I think get treated with like anti-mold, anti-rot sort of compounds. So you might want to check into that. Yeah, I mean, wood chips are just by far the most popular if you can get them.
So if I was
Leaves
doing
work
it
to some
on,
extent. Sorry.
if I was doing it on site, because we were thinking about getting like a wood chipper.
Mhm.
So could I do like, so you could do like small branches and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to use up small branches for sure. Just running through a chipper.
Okay.
Yeah. And they
Alright.
chip really easily because there's, when they're small diameter, they just
Yeah.
kind of fly through. So
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'd really recommend. We tried shipping up cactus. We get a lot of that, like the prickly pear cactus. I don't know. Do you have that there?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried shipping it up one year. It turns into glue, basically. It's really interesting stuff. And I actually started using it in my horse trees because it would glue everything together. But we had a patch where we wanted to try, like, see if we could basically seal the hill, like seal this like steep little slope. So we poured it over it and it dried. It looked like concrete, but it basically dried into this like kind of flexible, I don't know what to call it, like a material, but it like kind of capped the soil. It was really interesting. And when we like broke it up months later, the soil underneath was still really moist. So I think there's like some kind of unexplored potential there because I mean we have so much of it in a lot of places. It's an invasive species.
Yeah.
And it's fairly easy to work with. I mean, it's just like glue with kind of like chopped hay in it, except that it's it's got little spines in it. So if you mix something into it, I think it would be really cool for hydro seeding. If you like mixed, whatever seeds you wanted to establish in the cover crop into it. So I want to experiment with it more, but we haven't pulled the chipper out in like a couple of years. So yeah.
Okay.
So there's ideas, but yeah, anything
Yeah.
that you can get into like kind of a small diameter that's not like really silty, powdery would work.
So what about like all those, they talk about like chop and drop. So does that
Similar
work?
idea.
Is that the same thing? But does that not just, is that not just too powdery then? Or
No,
it
when you
works
chop and
fine?
drop, you wind up with like chunks. So you get like chunks of leaves. Or you
Uh,
can actually, I mean, with like comfrey and stuff, you can basically just chop it off at the base and let it lay on the ground
okay.
and it'll mat down. So it doesn't have the same like kind of packing effect, like where there's really no aeration through it.
Oh, okay. So it's if it makes it anaerobic, that's the problem
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kim, did that give you any ideas for your site?
Yeah, that's funny.
Just
I
chip up a whole bunch
have a
of
few of those cactuses. It'd be fun to try that. Yeah, I have some slope. I need to pay attention to it too. I want to put some trees in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's hard when you've got these strict regulations about devegetating everything so frequently. It's like, oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ask for an exemption. I'm gonna see what I can do about that. I want to plant the cover crop out there, and I don't want to have to cut the weeds every two years anymore, or 2 times a year. I mean,
Yeah. Did you get a chance to look in to see if anyone was like, either if there's any existing grazers working out there, or if any of your neighbors are interested in doing that?
grazing.
Yeah, grazing, like getting some, like a commercial grazer or like sheep or goats onto it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because there are a few lots out there that are dealing with the same problem. We bought the lot because the person, that owned it didn't want to deal with it because it's expensive and it's a hassle. So there are other lots out there that are in the same situation as us that are dealing with this. And I think it would be a great idea to have some kind of, sheep feeding on it instead of it just being disperse the soil out there too by the bobcat, driving on it. So that's something I'm thinking about for sure.
Yeah, if you can
I'm
get
to
it
do it
like
all
a
by myself.
continuous- Oh, I'm sorry.
Like
what
an
was that?
idea. Hmm?
Can you say that again? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I don't know where to start though. It's just like an idea.
I see. Okay. If you can get like a continuous area, I'm just bringing your site up again, of even a few acres.
Yeah, there are 4 lots combined that are maybe around 3 or 4 acres right there.
Yeah, because the grazing contractors that I know won't do less than an acre.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, I've put, I was working with a group that we put 100, I think we had 120 goats on an acre for like 24 hours, and they, pretty much cleared it. So it depends how, there's a cost benefit of like, it's expensive. The expensive part of working with those animals is moving them, right? It's the transportation. So if you have to move from site to site. But the only ones I know are working with like really big herds, like 500 to 600, but I could reach out and see if anyone's working in that area or would be able to like calve off like a small flock.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I'm also thinking about bees out there, but I know people have pools out there, and it said if you have bees, you need to be concerned with your neighbors that have pools. So, but that's another thing I'm thinking about, using the space for.
Yeah, that's a good justification for doing like some pollinator planting and stuff too. So.
Yeah, I think that would be good together.
What kind of plants do you have on the site right now?
Russian, or the what's it called? The Russian prickly weed, the tumbleweed, regular tumbleweed, a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In the spring we get a lot of mustard flowers, a lot of it. It's like 10 feet high. You can walk in it like a jungle. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It looks nice when it's planted like that. I know, they're invasive and they're not supposed to be there, but I'm like, I don't know. I prefer that over it being knocked down by the bobcat.
Yeah. The big thing with mustard is that with the mustard plants is they remove bromide from the roots, and so it actually like it's really allelopathic, so it essentially like obliterates anything else that's growing there. So it's hard to like reestablish something, but yeah, I mean something's better than nothing usually. And when you can knock down those canes, and at least get them back onto the soil, so it's putting something back into it, then
yeah, sometimes they ask us to remove that too, so it has to be completely bare because that's a fire hazard to leave something cut grass.
So how do they ask you to remove, like, do you end up cutting it and like taking it off in garbage bags, or like burning it, or I mean burning it would seem weird, but
yeah, it has to be hauled off, or there's a couple of piles that we try to pile it up, but then they ask us to remove the piles, and it's I don't know. We feel, I don't know, I wish we would be left alone sometimes. Even getting the water took a couple of years, and that feels like we just wanted water to be able to plant trees, but I'm happy we have that.
Yeah, if you could at least like compost that, like whatever biomass you're getting off of the weed control, that would start to help. Maybe get like a load of horse manure or something, and like just something to start. And so you could make a pile that's not a pile of dry brush. I'm looking at my other screen because there's a document that I helped edit for Neil Bertrando. Yeah, here we go. Brush mineral guide. I don't see what the difference between the final and the guide final and the final guide is. So I'm going to drop this into the chat for you. But that's a PDF on, oh, let me make sure it's shared first. Oh, anyone with a light computer, so you should be able to open it. So that's basically a guide on like how you can use, it's essentially like hugelkultur in a way, but it's not using like the large diameter logs. It's a little more general, and it's really designed for like these semi-arid climates, like Neil's based in Reno, just north of Reno. So it's really that like kind of high desert climate where you don't have a lot of moisture to break stuff down, which is really what hugel depends on, is like having large logs under soil, and then they're soaking up a bunch of water, which doesn't really happen, very often. So you might want to take a look through that and see if there's anything helpful in there.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I want to go through. I don't think there's really. I don't know. I guess if there's anything that's jumped out at you in terms of like issues with the assignment, or I mean, if you've got other questions, feel free to throw them out. I just want to see where I usually get this up before you guys get here, but where like students tend to get stuck is what I'd like to bring up here. Come on. Everything's a little slow this morning. Yeah, so one of the big things is making sure that everywhere on your map, like you can drop a pin anywhere, it's got a microclimate and a zone. Everywhere is going to be something. So what sometimes I've had students do would be, and this isn't just for you three, because others are going to be watching the replay. So if you're watching the replay, like make sure that I can drop a pin anywhere on your map and it's labeled as a microclimate, and then in the zones portion it's got a zone to it, because everything is going to have something. So whether that's like, this is really shady, this is partial shade, this is full sun, whatever, those are your microclimates, and that's fine. It doesn't have to get super complicated, but just make sure that's all the design designated anywhere on your map. If you're fortunate enough to have like one type of tree and one type of shrub on your site, then go with that. If you're not, if for whatever reason you've only got like grasses or like broadleaf plants, that's fine. You can just, because one of the criteria is you choose 5 plants from your site, so they don't have to be natives, because a lot of people won't have 5 natives, or they won't have even any native plants that they can find on their sites. It's all going to be invasive, like mollies. This is especially true for like, for small suburban sites. So just pick 5 plants. I mean, if you're really out of luck and you don't actually have 5 different plants to find, name what you've got and note that. But yeah, generally we ask for like, if you can find 1 tree, 1 shrub, and they don't have to be native. You do need to have those plants indicated on the slide with the microclimates. Yeah, okay. So your scale, make sure your scale is accurate, which I think all 3 of you are good for. Oh, the other thing is with the colors, with the zone colors. I know with the template, they're varying degrees of like kind of pink and orange. And if you notice that they really don't stand out, feel free. Like I prefer to use everything from red to blue. So I use like blue for my zone 5. I'm going backwards here. Blue for my zone 5, green for my zone 4, yellow for zone 3, orange for zone 2, and then red for zone 1, or reverse it depending. So really, like I like to really make sure those colors stand out. I know on the template they're not as clear, but just take a look at your map and see like, okay, does this actually, like, is it easy to tell without looking at the legend of like that these are distinct distinctly different zones. And because sometimes, especially when you've got like zones that are really kind of chopped up or crowded together, it's hard to tell, like, is that, is that the light orange or is that more of the peach? So I like to make them a bit more distinct than they have in the template. And that's a pretty common remark that I make on assignments for this next one. Microclimates should be named by the microclimate, so not the location. So like hot and dry, cool and shaded, rather than like by the location. So it's not behind the water tank, it's like a cool and shady spot, for example, behind the water tank, something like that. Okay, that's microclimate. Yeah. Okay, the other thing that came up last, I think they have this fixed. Have you guys seen anything with the natural capital plant database? Has anything? No, okay. They must have taken it out. We did have access for students to that in the past, but the people that run that decided to revoke it. If you want to get a natural subscription, I find it really useful to be able to spell the word database when I'm searching for it. I'm going to drop this into the chat. There we go, permacultureplantdata.com. It's $50 a year if you can spare it. I find it really useful. It's a huge database, especially for California. There's a lot of projects that took place in California, so there was a lot of databases built around that. It's primarily geared towards the US, so it may not be as useful to you, Lynette, but I can check into it if you'd like. But that's a really useful site for like searching up different zones, different soil types, rainfall patterns, individual types of plants. Like there's all different combinations that you can use for the filters. And then you can download a CSV with a plant list and different kinds of uses like livestock fodder, medicinal or edible, hedgerows, windbreaks, riparian species. Like there's really a lot of selection you can make there. But then there's also PFAS. So if you want to just go the free route, I would just go with the plants for yes, plants for future. How are you guys doing in general?
Pretty good. I think yeah, my mind is running when I'm out there and like thinking about everything to do and stuff like that. It's exciting. It's nice to have this class kind of help me through my thinking of what to do. That's kind of how I'm taking it. And it's exciting. Yeah, I'm worried about like when it comes to like learning species names and all of that kind of thing and how to get enough plants out there. I know that's important too. But I'm excited.
Do you mean how to get enough plants out there, like for biodiversity, or how to get enough plants? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I think especially on these degraded sites, wherever you start is an improvement. That was one thing I really remember from my PDC with Jeff Lawton, was him really pressing on the point, like just starting with a design process is a huge improvement from where most people, from where most people have started, and probably the site that you're on, has ever been considered from. Like it's getting increasingly, it's getting more common, but at least just applying the thinking to it is already improvement. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to like create this like beautiful, abundant, biodiverse site. Yeah. When you've got so many pressures from the outside, and like, on a small site, especially, like you've got external limitations that you're working in, like Molly, with the HOA, right? Like you've got so many external limitations already, which can actually end up being kind of helpful, and then it helps you make decisions of like, oh, well, that's just completely off the table.
Mhm.
So what can, how can I work within the parameters that I've got? So don't be too hard on yourself if you're like, you want, the future that you see, that you envision,
Yeah.
so much different than from the present. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
No, it's like a weird lesson in time at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
I started listening to a permaculture podcast this morning, and I found it very interesting just hearing how people are talking about how they're designing, and I think I don't know, it was nice to listen to. They talked about how the edges are interesting in permaculture, that's like a space to utilize or to take advantage of, and it got me thinking.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Molly, how about you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely fun to get into. I feel sometimes overwhelmed with all of the information, only because this is like my first like type of class like this, and so all of my knowledge is kind of just like stuff that I've learned throughout the years, and so I'm not like super like knowledgeable on like the different type of practices based in like permaculture and stuff, but I'm sure that will just like come with time, like you said, like don't like push yourself too hard in like these, and so I'm just trying to like kind of do my best with the knowledge I have, and kind of just like slowly try to build up my knowledge base. And so it's definitely helpful having like the template and kind of seeing other people's examples, because they are like different abilities, I feel like. And so that's helpful. But in terms of this, like, I feel like it's good. Yeah.
Okay. Lynette?
Well, I really like the course, but I'm a bit worried. I'm on holiday at the moment. I go back to school beginning of September. I'm a bit
Okay.
worried about fitting it all in. And also I find it takes me a lot of time because it's quite a large, complex site. So every time I do something, it's a lot of work. And also I feel a bit, I think like you were saying when you marked the last lesson, you were saying about doing smaller projects. And I think really it's not about me thinking, oh yeah, I've got to have a complete design for the whole site. It's more about doing little bits and then it gradually adding up over time rather than having to have, appear with an all singing, all dancing plan.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of back and forth on this that I've been in, like in the kind of permaculture community, or like with other designers, of like how useful is a grand master plan really? And sometimes it is really useful in kind of bringing all the pieces together. Like, why are we building a garden here and not over there? It's like, oh well, because this is knowing what the bigger plan and the bigger context is all, I would say it's almost always, or it's very often useful. Trying to work on the whole plan at once is almost a recipe for failure, and at least burning yourself out, because it's too overwhelming. It's too many like moving parts. And even if it's like literally just moving parts of like moving tools and moving supplies, moving people around, moving hoses or whatever, and then it gets to be overwhelming. Like the more task switching, the more decision making you have to be doing, the harder it is to move any one thing forward. And I mean, I talk about this like I'm immune to it, which is hilarious because like I try and limit my task switching, but I've got like at least 3 different projects I'm working on today. And it's just like every time you need to change, it takes a certain percentage of your mental capacity just to make the change. And that's if you're operating, you know, at a pretty high level, like you're well supported, you got enough sleep, you've been eating properly, you're hydrated. It's like not, you know, 40 degrees outside, or, you know, 110 or, you know, whatever. Like, yeah, so keep in mind that like you can focus on just a particular area, and like this might be a good time to start narrowing that down. Like, okay, I'm just going to work on designing zone 1. Now that you have a picture of what the whole place looks like the whole thing, just pick like that permaculture garden, or just pick like that one area to zone in on. So yeah, and because I mean, you don't want to go into the school session like already feeling behind the 8 ball, like trying, you're kind of struggling to catch up, because life will life at you, guarantee. Like, you know, I feel like right now it's like it's kind of lifing at all of us. I'm like, what the heck? Is like everybody I know is like pushing something uphill. Like it's been really hard. You know, the astrologists are all talking about like Lionsgate and stuff. I'm like, I don't know if anybody buys it, if anybody like ascribes to that, but like something is going on up there, because I just feel like everybody that I know, and maybe it's the end of summer or something, but it feels like we're going into fall already, trying to like pull too many things together. So I think just like really take it easier on yourself than you think you're going to need to, and leave some capacity for you know, renewal, recharge, sleep. So
Yeah.
And make sure you get to the end, like go through the whole course, even if it means like 75 or 80% instead of like you want to do 110%. It's fine. You know, like I think it's much, personally, I think it's much harder on a person mentally to start in really strong and then not finish at all, than to start in even like, you know, whatever, 70-80% and finish, right? At least you finish, because then you know what the whole thing looks like. And you can always go back, you can always reuse that template, you can find another site to work on, you can work on the same site, and you completely redo the design, but go through the whole thing at least. So
Yeah, because it's a process, isn't it, really?
yeah,
At the end of the day. Yeah.
yes, it's a process. Thank you.
And yeah, and I've got lots of ideas about stuff. And also I think I need to also talk to a lot of people at school, you know, like the teachers and the kids and the parent. You know, I need a lot more like what they want, rather than me just go in and go, dunna, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that, like let the site, including the people that are on the site, design itself.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I think it's less about just turning up with something. It's more, it's just a way to see how it evolves, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I feel really good about it. Yeah.
Which is hard. It's hard. And I think there's a lot of hype around like, you know, showing up as like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, especially because they're like, oh, you've done the course, what are you, you know, like what's next? You know, what do we do with it all? But I think, yeah, it doesn't, I can see it doesn't really work, like it's not going to work like that at all. It's not like I can go, here we go, let's do this, this, and this. I can see there's a couple of glaring things like, you know, the water capture and the soil. I realize the soil's really not in very good shape at all. But to do that, I have to get a load of other people involved who will do that. And that's, you know, so it's a step-by-step process, really. But I think there's a lot of people who are quite up for it. So yeah, that'd be good.
Do you feel like you have a support system, like in your people in your corner?
Yeah, definitely. There's we have this eco school committee, and there's a few people in there that really work quite hard on it. And the people that we like in the permaculture, that work in the permaculture garden, the staff and the students. So yeah, I feel I have that, and my management, they're quite up for it, but I do have to present it in a certain sort of way, you know, I have to present it in a way to get things through. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely people who are up for it, but it's just everybody's we're all really busy, you know, we're a bit time poor, really.
Yeah.
but stuff does move along. It just takes a while.
Yeah, yeah, it just takes a little longer.
Yeah.
How about you, Molly? How are you doing in your HOA?
No, I think like, well, yeah, I think definitely working with, it's so easy because my site is my parents' house, and so I have a good relationship with them, and so doing like the client interview was good because like they're like working with me and stuff. And it was like funny because like in my mind I was thinking, I was like, okay, like I imagine this is what they would think. And then like they kind of like had other things that they were thinking. I was like, oh, well, then that's interesting. Like I never would have like thought that, even though I had like this perceived notion. But it's great to be in the same house and doing this there and kind of keeping them involved in this like early stages, because like I know like my mom especially, she's like would definitely be like fully involved like through the implementation process, which is nice. Kind of knowing I'm not like the only one who has to like do everything, and so like kind of keeping their like ideas in like the design, mainly because it is their property, and I'm not going to be here always, like kind of will help in the long run, just because then they'll want to help do it in the end. And so that's nice. Definitely on my site it's would be more of like a zone, kind of like talking about like implementing in zones, just because there is not a whole lot of hands working on it, but that's probably going to be the way I would go on it, and just kind of keeping it section by section, hopefully. Because most things are implemented. It's a suburban area, and so like we have water at least to most of the site, and so that helps. But yeah, I think I consider myself pretty lucky in that regard. So
cool. Okay. I didn't want to like to I don't know what to say. I didn't want to needle you on it, but it's so, you've got a really good attitude about it, which is refreshing and kind of surprising. I see a number of students come through with like HOA limitations and like, or working with parents, working with family, and they're up against like so many, I don't want to say like, yeah, they're interpersonal challenges. Like the challenges of working with people are much bigger than the challenges of working with land. You know,
yeah,
like it's very easy to teach where to plant the trees. It's much harder to like figure out where to plant the idea.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah. And I did like speak to that in my presentation, and like my mom and I do like butt heads like a little bit, but it's not like I can kind of sway to her.
yeah.
Like I think she definitely leans on me on like this kind of regard, just because I've been like more into it these past few years. And so I know there are things that I know she's like pretty like dead set on,
Okay.
like in terms of like the cleanliness factor,
Yeah.
how she likes things neat and tidy. And so, and I'm just like not that way. I'm like, okay, like we'll just leave it and we'll let it do its time and energy.
Yeah.
But but yeah, no, I think as long as I can have like the information to like kind of back up my statements, like I think that's definitely helpful, and just like I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Good. Okay. Cool. That's nice to know. Kim, how are you doing back there? You're very small in the screen, so I feel like you're like at the back of the room. I'm like,
stand out a little bit. Hi, I'm here.
Is it, how are you, like, is it just you, or are you kind of like an island, or do you feel like you've got support?
No, I don't really have any support. I don't know. There are neighbors out there that I feel like are willing. I just need to start building relationships, really, is what it's about. Out there, and in general, I think, with these Facebook groups and stuff like that. Yeah, but I'm not working right now. I have my 3 kids and I have stuff coming up and my life is, busy in different ways, but I have, I really want to make this, really want to do this. I'm, excited about it.
Mhm. You want me to connect you with some of my other students?
That would be amazing.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm feeling a little, I feel kind of sheepish for a reason. Jamul or Jamul?
I can't really hear you. You're breaking up.
How do you pronounce the town? Is it Jamul or Jamul? Where you're at?
Portuguese band.
Oh, yeah.
Verde.
No, wait. Yeah, okay.
The community is called Portuguese band, but it's in Rancho Palo Verde.
Why did I? Yeah, you are. Okay, so you're about an hour from Malibu. Okay, but you're down. Yeah, you're more like Long Beach area. Okay. Yeah, I've got some people in LA that I'd love to connect you with. I think you guys would actually get along really well.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's so hard to do that alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how people with partners that like aren't on the same page do it. I'm just like, yeah, it's too.
Yeah.
But
Thank you so much.
yeah. Okay. If you don't have any, do we have any other questions or? Okay. I'm feeling a little better than when we started. I feel like the energy's kind of shifted a little bit. But yeah, and just never hesitate to reach out with like questions, or just like if you get really stuck or you get frustrated on something, just like shoot me a message on Voxer or email or whatever. So
Perfect.
okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, you guys have a great day.
See you all
Nice
later.
to see your faces.
Thanks
Have a
so
nice week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.